In the final years of the 19th century and the first breaths of the 20th, the dense, humid wilderness of the southern Philippines became a proving ground that exposed the brutal weaknesses of American sidearms. In September 1902, deep in the tangled greenery of Mindanao, an American corporal emptied every chamber of his .38 caliber revolver into a warrior who refused to fall. 6 shots hammered into the man's torso with perfect accuracy. Yet the fighter kept sprinting forward, closing the distance with a terrifying inevitability. 30 feet shrank to 20, then 10, and before the American could draw another breath, the warrior's blade carved open his throat. When reinforcements later discovered the soldier's body, his revolver remained locked in a death grip, all shells expended, all hits confirmed. The 6 wounds in the tribesman's chest had not slowed him long enough to save a life. And this scene was not an anomaly. It echoed across Mindanao like a fatal refrain. Time and time again, American patrols were overrun by opponents who absorbed bullets with unnerving resilience. The .38 caliber revolvers, praised on paper for their manageability and modern design, were betraying the men forced to depend on them. In Washington, the grim reports piled higher each month. Commanders realized they needed more than incremental improvement. They needed a weapon capable of halting a charging adversary instantly, before he reached striking distance. What they did not yet know was that a man in Utah, working quietly at his bench covered in metal filings and sketches, had already begun creating the answer. A firearm that would redefine American combat and endure longer than almost any weapon of its era. The Philippine-American War at the turn of the century was entering a phase of ferocious resistance. American units clashed with Moro warriors whose culture, armor, and battle tradition stretched back centuries. These fighters had spent generations resisting foreign rule. First the Spanish, now the Americans. And they fought with a fearless intensity few U.S. soldiers had experienced. They wore vests assembled from layers of carabao horn and brass plates linked by metal rings. Some fastened ancient Spanish helmets atop their heads. Before battle, many consumed potent herbal brews and stimulants that dulled pain and pushed them into what soldiers described as near-trance states. Combined with their armor and deep-rooted warrior ethos, these factors created a nightmare scenario for infantry accustomed to facing conventional enemies. One American officer wrote in his field notes that his men routinely fired round after round into attackers, even striking vital organs. Yet the charging fighters continued advancing, as though propelled by something more than muscle and bone. Retreat was impossible, reloading was too slow, and hesitation was fatal. These first-hand accounts reached General William Crozier, head of the U.S. Army Ordnance Department, and the verdict was undeniable. The lightweight .38 caliber revolver, adopted to replace the older, heavier .45 caliber models, simply lacked the force needed to stop determined foes. Something had to change. Crozier ordered a new scientific study to determine what caliber would provide the stopping power soldiers needed. In 1904, the controversial Thompson Law Guard tests unfolded in Chicago, involving everything from ballistics pendulums to live cattle and cadavers. Critics accused the Army of barbaric experimentation, but military leadership insisted that only hard data could guide future decisions. After months of rigorous trials, the conclusion was blunt. Any bullet smaller than .45 caliber was insufficient in close-quarters combat. The Army would have to return to a cartridge with the energy transfer of the older .45s. But this posed another problem. Those big-bore revolvers were outdated. The new century demanded a weapon faster, stronger, and more efficient. A semi-automatic pistol capable of firing multiple powerful rounds with far greater speed than a revolver cylinder could rotate. So the Army announced specifications for a new military sidearm. In Ogden, Utah, an unassuming 48-year-old gunsmith read those requirements with a quiet kind of excitement. His name was John Moses Browning, and although few knew it at the time, he was on the verge of designing a weapon that would become both a legend and a standard for more than 100 years. Browning had spent his life immersed in the world of firearms. Born into a family of gunsmiths in 1855, he learned his craft in the glow of his father's forge, studying the movement of metal, rhythm of mechanisms, and the harmony of physics and precision. By 13, he had crafted his first working rifle. In his 20s, he created designs so innovative that Winchester bought them eagerly. His falling block rifle became the famed Winchester Model 1885. His lever-action concept shaped some of the most iconic rifles of the American frontier. But Browning was not content to refine the past. He was already envisioning the future. He recognized that semi-automatic firearms, capable of cycling their own actions through recoil or gas pressure, would dominate the coming century. While many gunmakers continued polishing revolvers or perfecting lever actions, Browning began developing self-loading mechanisms almost no one else understood. He filed patents for gas-operated shotguns and recoil-driven pistols that were ahead of their time by decades. By 1900, he had built a functioning semi-automatic pistol based on the short recoil principle, a system in which the barrel and slide travel rearward together for a split second before separating, allowing the slide to eject a spent casing and chamber a new round. The brilliance of this mechanism lay in its simplicity and reliability. Instead of manually cycling a cylinder or working a lever, the shooter simply pulled the trigger. The pistol handled everything else. In the years that followed, Browning refined his design in collaboration with Colt, striving to produce a weapon that matched the Army's exacting demands. The military wanted a sidearm powerful enough to stop a charging foe instantly, yet reliable enough to operate in mud, sand, bitter cold, and sweltering heat. It needed to be easy to disassemble, clean, and maintain, even for recruits with little technical experience. Above all, it had to fire without fail every time the trigger was pulled. Browning responded by designing not just a pistol, but a cartridge made specifically for it. The 45 ACP automatic Colt pistol. This round fired a 230-grain bullet at roughly 850 feet per second, subsonic, heavy, and devastating on impact. It delivered the blunt force stopping power the Army insisted upon. Browning then engineered a pistol around this cartridge, introducing features revolutionary for that era. A grip safety that prevented accidental discharges, a slide stop that held the slide open when the magazine was empty, a single-stack magazine holding 7 rounds, a remarkable improvement over 6-shot revolvers. Every control, curve, and component served a functional purpose. From 1906 to 1911, the Army tested multiple pistols from several manufacturers, pushing each design to its limits. Mud, sand, fouling, water immersion. If a gun could jam, break, or misfeed, the tests would expose it. Colt's Browning-designed pistol went head-to-head with Savage and Luger, among others. The evaluations were merciless. Then came March 29, 1911, the trial that sealed the pistol's fate. Under Browning's direct supervision, a single Colt prototype fired 6,000 rounds over 2 days, pausing only long enough to dunk the overheated barrel in a bucket of water. Observers waited for malfunctions, a failure to feed, a stuck casing, a cracked part. None came. The pistol ran flawlessly. The competing Savage pistol suffered dozens of malfunctions during the same trial, sealing the Army's choice. That day, the U.S. military officially adopted Browning's design as the pistol, automatic, caliber .45, model of 1911. It cost the government about $14.50 per unit and weighed just under 2.5 pounds unloaded. No one imagined then how iconic this weapon would become. Its first great battlefield proving ground arrived during World War I. In October 1918, during the brutal fighting in France's Argonne Forest, Corporal Alvin York and 16 other men advanced against fortified German machine gun nests. As they moved forward, enemy gunfire tore through their formation, dropping soldiers before they could return effective fire. York, an exceptional marksman raised hunting in the hills of Tennessee, responded with calm precision. He used his Springfield rifle to eliminate several machine gunners. But when a group of 6 German soldiers charged him with bayonets leveled, York switched to his M1911. Using the same method he had learned hunting turkeys, shooting the man farthest back first so those in front would not notice immediately, he dropped all 6 attackers in rapid succession. The pistol never jammed, never misfired. York and the remnants of his squad captured 132 prisoners and silenced over 30 machine guns. Forensic investigators in 2006 later found the battlefield site and recovered spent casings. 46 from York's rifle and 23 .45 CP casings from his M1911, matching his account perfectly. Word of the pistol's effectiveness spread quickly among American troops. A weapon that could stop an enemy instantly was worth its weight in gold. After the war, soldiers provided feedback on small issues. The hammer spur tended to pinch the hand. The grip safety could fail to disengage under stress, and the trigger's shape was not ideal for gloved hands. Between 1920 and 1926, the Army introduced subtle but meaningful improvements: a shortened hammer, extended grip safety, checkered smaller trigger, and arched mainspring housing, resulting in the M1911A1. The operating system remained unchanged, but the ergonomics improved significantly. Browning himself passed away in 1926, leaving behind a legacy of firearms that shaped the world. The BAR, the M1917 and M2 machine guns, the high-power pistol, but none would surpass the influence and longevity of the M1911. By World War II, the M1911A1 had become inseparable from American identity. On D-Day, June 6, 1944, officers, paratroopers, tank crews, engineers, and medics carried it ashore in France. The demand for pistols skyrocketed. Colt was already overwhelmed making machine guns, so the government contracted companies with no previous gun-making experience. Remington Rand, known for typewriters, became the largest producer, manufacturing almost 900,000 pistols. Union Switch and Signal, Ithaca, and even Singer, famous for sewing machines, contributed. Cosmetics changed to speed production. Parkerized coatings replaced bluing, and plastic grips replaced wood. But Browning's core design remained untouched, and the pistol performed in every environment imaginable: Arctic cold, desert heat, Pacific jungles. Tank crews trusted it as their most accessible weapon during emergency bailouts. Infantry saw it as a lifeline in close-quarters combat. Even German forces adopted captured examples, reclassifying them as Pistol 660. As the Second World War dragged toward its violent conclusion, the battered remnants of Germany's last-ditch Volkssturm militia clung to any firearm they could scavenge. And among the mismatched rifles and worn-out carbines appeared thousands of American .45 caliber pistols, captured, repurposed, and pressed into service by sheer desperation. A sidearm originally forged to stop charging warriors in the dense jungles of the Philippines had somehow journeyed halfway across the world, fighting battles its designer could never have imagined. By 1945, nearly 2 million M1911A1 pistols had rolled off American assembly lines to feed the demands of global war. And when the guns finally fell silent, military planners assumed this old warhorse would fade quietly into retirement like so many other battlefield relics. They could not have been more mistaken. Just 5 years later, the Korean peninsula erupted in conflict, plunging troops into temperatures so vicious that steel froze beneath their gloves. Yet the 45 kept firing long after other weapons choked in the ice. A decade later, as the Vietnam War swallowed entire jungles in mud and monsoon, the M1911 followed American soldiers into rice paddies, bamboo thickets, and the suffocating tunnels where Viet Cong fighters lurked in darkness. The men who crawled into those narrow underground passageways, known as tunnel rats, trusted the 45 more than any rifle, because down there, in cramped shadows where a flash of movement meant life or death, they needed a weapon that ended threats instantly. By the late 1970s, political pressure pushed the U.S. toward standardizing with NATO's 9mm cartridge, forcing the Air Force to lead new pistol trials that dragged through years of debates, failures, and retests. Eventually, on January 14, 1985, the Beretta 92F officially replaced the 45, seemingly closing the chapter on 74 years of service. But the story didn't end. It simply shifted backstage. America's most elite warriors refused to give it up. Delta Force, founded in 1977, adopted customized M1911A1 pistols as their signature sidearms. Each operator received not just a weapon, but a meticulously tuned instrument, hand, fitted barrels, sharpened sights, precision triggers, and controls modified to perfection. Colonel Charles Beckwith, Delta's founder, insisted the 45 round delivered unmatched stopping efficiency in hostage rescues, minimizing the risk of overpenetration when innocent lives hung in the balance. Navy SEALs kept them for maritime operations. Marine Force Recon clung to upgraded versions. FBI hostage rescue teams holstered them for high-risk raids, and SWAT officers across the country trusted the old warfighter for its brutal, uncompromising impact. By the time Operation Desert Storm erupted in 1991, half a century after Pearl Harbor, American tank crews were still issued M1911A1 pistols, many of them older than the men carrying them. Yet the guns continued to run flawlessly, and the legacy only deepened. In 2012, the Marine Corps ordered 12,000 modernized M45A1 pistols from Colt, complete with rail systems, corrosion-resistant coatings, and refined ergonomics, yet still rooted in Browning's original .45 caliber blueprint. In 2019, a photograph surfaced of General Scott Miller, the senior American commander in Afghanistan and a former Delta operator, carrying a customized 1911 variant on active duty. More than a century after its birth, the pistol was still walking into war zones. Throughout its lifespan, the M1911 has appeared in nearly every American conflict imaginable. The border war with Mexico, interventions in Central America, both world wars, Korea, Vietnam, Grenada, Panama, the Gulf War, Iraq, Afghanistan. From Pancho Villa to insurgents in the mountains of the Middle East, the pistol has confronted every adversary the United States has faced for over 100 years, and it refuses to disappear. Manufacturers across the world still produce countless variations: Colt, Kimber, Ruger, Springfield Armory, Sig Sauer, Remington, and dozens more, because the design exists in the public domain, free for anyone to build. Millions have been made, likely surpassing 10 million in total. Walk into any gun shop today, and you can buy a 1911 nearly indistinguishable in function from the one Alvin York carried through the Argonne Forest. Same short, recoil mechanism, same grip angle, Same heavy 45 caliber authority. A 120-year-old design that remains as relevant as ever. The reason for its endurance is simple. A perfect marriage of ergonomics, reliability, and raw stopping power. Browning understood, long before modern engineers rediscovered the truth, that simplicity is the backbone of dependability. His recoil system relies on physics rather than fragile machinery, springs, steel, and momentum working in harmony. Dirt, mud, water, cold, heat, none of it matters. And when a soldier, police officer, or special operator needs a threat neutralized immediately, many still reach for the same design born in 1905. Because after a century of bloodshed, countless battles, and millions of rounds fired in every environment imaginable, one fact remains undeniable. The M1911 works. A weapon intended to last a decade has instead become immortal. A testament to American engineering, battlefield necessity, and the genius of John Moses Browning.